Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and honored and very, very happy that you're a part of our Reading with Your Kids family, helping us to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever you find your podcast. We have three amazing guests today. A little bit later on, Mikaela Wilson will be here to celebrate her Live, Laugh, and Grow series. But first, we'll be speaking with Dori Hillestead Butler and Kevan Atteberry as they celebrate Dear Beast. Before we invite our guests in, we want to invite you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. There's so much going on here in the readingwithyourkids.com. On April 22nd, we will be debuting a special series of episodes we are calling Protecting the Planet with Your Kids. My co-host, Alexia Brown, and I will be introducing you to some fantastic authors who can tell you how you can talk to your kids about climate change and why it's important to talk to our kids about climate change. And on April 27th, we will be hosting a free How to Be a Fantastic Podcast guest webinar. It's going to be a fantastic time. You don't want to miss it, especially if you are an author. So check it all out. All the information is on our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Joining us right now from the great state of Washington. Our guests today are the author and illustrator of Dear Beast. Please welcome to the show Dori Hillestead Butler and Kevan Atteberry. Dori, Kevan, how are you?
Very good, thanks.
Really happy to have both of you. And Dori is the author of Dear Beast. Dori, why don't you start by telling us all about this great story?
Sure. Well, it's more than one story. It's actually a whole series. There will be 4 books in total. The first one is simply called Dear Beast. And the second one is Dear Beast, the Pet Parade. That's the brand new one. But basically, it's an epistolary series, which means it's written in the form of letters between a dog and a cat who go back or who share a boy who goes back and forth between them and his divorced parents.
Oh, wow. This is what, the telling a story through letters. The first time I experienced that as a reader was reading the Screw Tape letters. And that was an amazing experience for me. Why did you make this choice to tell the story in this way?
I've always wanted to write a book in letters. I've always been a letter writer myself, and I've enjoyed books written in the form of letters. So, I've wanted to do a book in letters for years, and I've tried a couple of other versions, not of the dog and the cat, just human characters. But it never went anywhere. I think I needed the dog and the cat to really do this in letters.
What was it about the dog and cat that allowed you to make this successful? I don't know. Maybe just the way they look at things.
Maybe I was just trying too hard when I was writing in the voice of 12 and 13-year-old girls. When it became a dog and a cat, maybe it was just more playful.
Ah, cool. Having, as a dad of a daughter and remembering back to when she was 12 and 13, and not necessarily about my daughter. She was always, 9 going on 21. But boy, listening to some of the conversations her friends used to have when they were that age, I don't know if I'd want to crawl into their minds and try to imagine myself in their minds.
Well, maybe that's part of it too, is, when you write a more of a middle grade novel in scene, you're not just in the head. There's a lot of action going on, but when it's letters, it's all in, it's very cerebral. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so you need the right project.
Yeah. Kevan, what was this like for you to illustrate this type of book?
It was interesting and a challenge. I had not illustrated an early chapter book before. And the fact that it was told entirely with letters, I mean, there's a little bit of narrative, but because it was told entirely with letters, I had to think about how the illustrations were going to be used, because they're kind of an illustration anyways, just in the fact that there's a picture, there's a picture of a letter on each page. And, I didn't know how much real estate on the page I would have to develop these characters visually. Mm-hmm. But it was fun, and I had a lot of fun doing it.
Now, one of the things that I was mentioning to Kevan beforehand, Kevan and Dori actually just live a few miles away from each other. And it was, we hear about books that are traditionally published where the author and the illustrator have little to no contact with each other. In fact, we had a really neat episode of the show a few months back where we had both the illustrator and the author on, and it was the first time that they had had any communication between each other. And the author kind of broke down into tears. She was so happy to finally have met the person who put her ideas and words into pictures, and it was wonderful. This is an unusual situation in that you are living so close together. And Dori, I understand that you kind of pitched to your publisher having Kevan illustrate the book. Is that right?
I did, yeah. Yeah, Kevan and I are actually in the same critique group. So he had heard this the first manuscript before it was ever sold. I'm sure he gave me feedback to make it better right from the start. But yeah, I did pitch him. And there's a reason, aside from the fact he's very talented, there's another reason. So, I sold the book, but there's the backstory.
Okay.
So I got the idea to write the series when my daughter came to visit after adopting a cat. And so she'd grown up with our dog's getting pretty old now, but, the dog goes crazy whenever, she comes over. But the first day that she came over after adopting this cat, I could tell that our dog knew she had adopted a cat. And I started imagining what the dog might say to the cat if they could communicate, because I think our dog definitely had thoughts about this cat. But what a lot of people don't know is the cat that my daughter adopted came from Kevan. So, yeah. So when the series sold, my editor had some ideas for who might illustrate it. And I thought, yeah, they would all be great, but there's somebody I would really like for you to reach out to. And so I told her the backstory, and I didn't know if she was going to, ask Kevan to illustrate or not. I was thrilled when I heard. I think I heard from Kevan directly.
Yeah, I did. I can't remember where we were, but I said, "Oh, I'm so excited to be illustrating your books," and you didn't know at that point.
Yeah, I think that was an SCBWI event downtown. I may have screamed.
Well, that's wonderful. So this is a much more personal project than I imagine a lot of the projects that you work on, Kevan.
Absolutely. I write and illustrate books myself, which is, I know myself pretty well. So, but then I also illustrate for books for other authors, and in most cases of the early books, I never got to meet the author, which is typical in the industry. I got lucky once or twice, but I always met them in the end. Yeah.
Really? Have you met all of your authors?
I've met in person all but one. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's neat. Now that you had this connection with each other, and it's a series, so I'm imagining the connection will will continue on. Has that changed the way that you're writing at all, Dori? And I guess the same question to you, Kevan. Is it changing the way that you're illustrating and approaching the project?
I don't think so. Although I have to tell you right now, I am working on, right here to my right, I'm working on the illustrations for book 4. And I know it's the last book. And so I'm really, not that I haven't, put my heart into the other 3, but I really want this one to be special. So I'm going a little bit overboard on it.
Oh, me too. I mean, I revised that book so much more than I normally do. That's why you got it late.
Okay, that's fine. I could tell that the writing was a little different this time around. There is virtually no narrative in the book this time. Zero. There's literally no narrative in the book. It's all letters, whereas there's a little bit of narrative in between the letters in the other 3 books. So, which would give me a little more inspiration about what to put in there. But yeah.
So, Dori, now that this dream of yours to write a book entirely told through letters has come true, and you have this great series, is this something that you're looking to continue doing, or writing in this style?
I don't know. Maybe I will go back to human characters trying to write letters or short texts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We'll see.
You mentioned short text, and I'm wondering if that, and this can go out to both of you. I'm wondering, now that we're living in the Instagram age and texting and all of this, and this is, so many kids are communicating so much. Well, they're communicating a lot. They're not necessarily communicating a lot of information, but they're sending a lot of messages. But I remember when my kids first got their first cell phone, and I got this bill. It was like for $180 over. And I call up the phone company, and I'm like going, this is crazy. What is it, these extra charges for? And the person said, do you have a teenage daughter? And I said, I do. And the agent said, well, that's the problem. Your daughter must be texting. I checked her phone, and it wasn't. And I got back on the phone, and sure enough, the texting was my son to his girlfriend. And I took a look at the text, and it's like, hi, what's up? No. And I'm like, I spent $180 on this. But excuse my digression, but I'm wondering, do you envision that maybe we could have a book that is told entirely through text?
Well, honestly, I have written one. It's not sold yet, so we'll see.
Interesting. And what do you think that would be like for you, Kevan, trying to illustrate a story in that way?
Gosh, I mean, I guess it would depend on what the content of the story is. Like in Dear Beast, I can go outside of the letters and kind of invent, their environment and what's going on a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I actually got to hear Dori read a little bit of that story told in text at a retreat not too long ago. And it sounded really, really fun. I wasn't thinking about how I would illustrate it at the time. I was thinking about the story of these 2 girls that were texting. But yeah, it would probably be similar to doing it with the letters. Mm-hmm. With Dear Beast, every character in it, it's not just a dog and a cat. There's also a crow and a tomcat and a squirrel and skunk. They all exchange letters. That's all part of the story. So it was easy for me to, and they all had different kinds of paper and, writing instruments that they use. So you could tell they're all different that way. With text, all the phones pretty much look the same, and they're delivered pretty much the same. So I don't know how big I don't know. I start thinking about the design part of the book, and I should just think about the illustration. Oh, so and going back to illustrations, yeah, it would be pretty similar to Dear Beast.
Yeah.
I went off on a tangent there.
Wow, that's what we all do from time to time. Dori, it's interesting you were saying at the beginning of the show that this was that Dear Beast is a series of letters between these characters that are kind of telling the story of the child, the human child in the life of these beasts. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, sort of. It's also about the two pets learning to share this boy. In particular, the cat who has belonged to the boy, the boy's whole life. And so at the beginning of the first book, he believes he's the boy's only pet because Bubbles the fish doesn't really count as a pet. So, he doesn't think the dog really needs to be in this boy's life, and he encourages the dog to move on and find another family to take care of. So it's a journey in terms of the two pets learning to get along and learning that they both have something to offer this boy.
It's interesting as you're talking about that, and we were talking earlier on about getting into the minds of young girls. One of the things that I've observed is that, especially with girls, but also with some guys, they have a real hard time sharing friends. There's that whole, you can't be friends with so-and-so and be friends with me. You got to be friends with me and not talk to that one. And I ran a daycare, an after-school program years and decades ago, actually. And that was the issue that came up more than anything else. It's, Sally won't talk to me because she's best friends with Susie. And did some of that inspire this story for you?
Maybe it did deep down. I wouldn't have thought so until you actually started down that path. I suppose there is some of that because the cat is very jealous of the new dog and the attention that he gets from Andy and the family. But the dog really isn't jealous. The dog just wants to make friends with everybody. So yeah, I guess it is a friendship story, navigating friendship too.
Well, as you're talking about the story and we're having this conversation, I'm imagining that this could be a really fun book for a family to read together. It's a book that kids are going to be reading independently, but I think it would be a really, really fun book for a family to read together and take on the different voices of the different characters and read the different letters. I think that would be a blast and could be a really great way to open up some real fun and important conversations about friendship and relationships.
Yeah, and I think it's also a good opportunity for families that are reading with their kids to take turns reading. The child can look at one page, one letter that's not overwhelming to read. Whereas if a family might be reading a longer book and the child just sees a wall of text, that can be a little harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can be very intimidating for kids.
Yeah.
Some kids. We just had a conversation with Malcolm Mitchell, who is a former Super Bowl champion. He's turned children's author. He was telling me his story when he arrived at college. One of his first days in class, the teacher asked one of the students to stand up and read, and he became terrified because it was at that moment that he had to acknowledge to himself that he wasn't a really strong reader. And the idea that he may be asked to stand up in this college classroom and read aloud was positively terrifying for him. Thankfully, it inspired him to go out and to become a better reader, and he did that by picking up picture books as a college student and reading him by himself in his dorm, and right now he's an incredible it's amazing. But it's important that we kind of recognize that, and if we can help our kids when they're younger, kids who are intimidated by those wall of words and wall of text, if we can help them at a young age kind of get over that fear, then we don't have to worry about them ending up in college being afraid to stand up and read aloud.
Yeah.
Kevan, you were mentioning that you're also an author. Can you tell us about your latest project?
My last book that I wrote came out last year. It was called Ghost Cat, and it's different than most everything else I've ever done. Most of my other books are all very humorous, and most of them involve monsters, friendly monsters. Ghost Cat took on a little more serious tone. I think it's a happy and joyful book about loss and moving on. I'm very proud of it. I love the way people read it and get affected by it, which is, not to say I don't love when people read my other books and laugh, and I like that too. But yeah,
it's a beautiful book, and it's for everybody, kids, adults, everybody.
Awesome.
Anybody who's ever loved.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we need to find out where our listeners can go online to connect with both of you to find out what you've already created and what's coming up next. So, Kevan, first, can you tell us where we can find you online?
You can find me at my name, KevanAtteberry.com. That's KevanAtteberry.com.
Awesome. And Dori, where can we find you?
At www.kidswriter, KIDSWRITER.com.
Ooh, cool. We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Dear Beast, a great series told through letters. And it was written by Dori Hillestead Butler and illustrated by Kevan Atteberry. Dori, Kevan, thank you so much for being part of the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
We hope you enjoyed our chat with Dori and Kevan. We're going to be inviting Mikaela in just a moment. Again, we want to remind you to please go to readingwithyourkids.com. So much information there. And be sure to sign up for our newsletter, readingwithyourkids.com. Join us right now from Denver in Colorado. Really excited to welcome this guest on. She is a debut author of a great series called Live, Laugh, Grow. And the name of her first book is Andre, the Best Big Brother. Please welcome to the show, Mikaela Wilson. Mikaela, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm excited to have you on. Mikaela has a wonderful website. Just a spoiler alert, I checked it out. She has two kids that inspired her to write the series, and they are absolutely gorgeous kids.
Thank you so much.
So I'm taking it that Andre, your son Andre, was the inspiration for this first book.
Absolutely, yes. My first book, the idea to write the book sparked when I was pregnant with my second, because I was looking for a book specifically for him to kind of prepare him to be a big brother. So I was searching for a Big Brother book on the internet, and I couldn't find any with families of color. And so that kind of in my head got the wheels turning, and I was like, oh, maybe I should write one. But at the time, I didn't know how to do it. It seemed too daunting. I just had no clue what it took to publish a book. So I waited until I had my daughter, and I'm glad I did, because then I got to see the interactions with them and their special relationship, and the book kind of talks about that too. So the book is basically about the change in the dynamic of a family when a new baby comes home, and the jealousy the older sibling can experience, and then the amazing relationship the siblings have and the bond that they have once the baby is there. Yeah,
it really is true. Sibling relationships are beautiful, but they're tough.
They are.
They are really tough. And when you think about it from the perspective, your kids seem to be about the same. The age difference seems to be very similar to my kids, who are now in their 20s. But I do remember, my son was the center of the universe.
Yes.
He was the first grandchild on both sides of the family. We have a very big extended family. People live nearby, and he spent time with both his grandparents on both sides, and was adored. And so when we were expecting my daughter, he was excited. He was also a little nervous.
No, exactly.
You know. And when you think about, here I am, and I'm getting everything, and now all of a sudden I got to share your attention.
Yep, it's a life-changing event for them. Very life-changing.
And it's actually more than just sharing. As I'm thinking back now, because when the baby comes, 90% of everybody's attention is on this brand new life. And so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So the book kind of talks about that too, and how he's used to getting all the parents' attention, and then how the parents kind of involve him. You can help with the bottle, or you can help us throw the diaper away. And that kind of helped with our son in the real, this book was totally inspired by how our situation played out.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great resource for families, because I think, number one, I don't think enough families think it through and think this is going to be a change. And they think about how it's affecting me and where we're going to get the extra money. But we really need to think about how it's going to affect the child that's already here, that's only 2 or 3 years old, and it's going to have to process this huge change.
Exactly. And I found too, because I bought quite a few books, but a lot of the big sibling books didn't really go into the jealousy or the huge emotional adjustment that they go through in the beginning. So mine touches on that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's wonderful, because, if you would sat down with Andre and said, hey, are you ever jealous of your sister? No, of course not. No, I love my sister. But if you're reading a character in a book, and the character in the book is a little bit jealous, and, then Andre can sit back and say, yeah, I kind of felt that way too a little bit.
Right.
And it's okay.
Exactly.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. So that's the book. And the book, the family in the book obviously is based on my family, which is multicultural. So I'm Asian, my husband's Black, and the kids are both biracial. So I'm modeling my series after books that I grew up with, like Berenstain Bears or Little Critter or Splat the Cat. And so this is my initial book, but I'm going to have tons of different topics after this. And I would like to just follow the family with many, many different topics.
One of the things that I oftentimes ask debut authors, and they tell me about their journey becoming an author, I say, so have you caught the bug yet? Is this one and done, or do you see more books coming from you? I don't even have to ask you that. You've already let us know. Oh, there's going to be loads of books coming from me.
Yeah. And initially, I didn't. It kind of like I said, I had this idea for one book. So going into the course that I took to help self-publish, which April Cox did, I highly recommend her. But I was just like, I'm going to write this one book because I know there's a need for more diversity in this specific category that I know lots of people search for. And then while I was doing it, I came up with different ideas, and I decided to do the series.
I have some. I want to get into the multicultural family a little bit, but before I do, I'm just curious. Did you do the thing that my wife and I did when my daughter came into the world? When my son came in to visit her first in the hospital after she was born, we had a little present there for him that we told him she brought him.
We didn't, but my mom did. My mom's a pro, so Grammy had that ready for him, for sure.
That was such... It was I remember my son coming in, and we said, Christopher, look what Alejandra brought you. And it was a toy, and his eyes, it lit up. He looked at my daughter in a completely different way. He also looked at us thinking, how did she keep the baby and that gift inside there to get... I don't need to know. I just want this present.
That's so cute. But yeah, that's a great trick. But yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but my mom knew to take care of that.
Well, you just heard it here, folks. If you are expecting your second and your first is just a couple of years old, it is a great technique. It works wonders.
Yes. And I will also say, I'm coming out with the big sister book to that. It'll actually be out by the time this comes out. So there'll be a big sister book for families with a brother born first, and then there'll be a big sister book, Noelle, the best big sister, as well.
Tell me a little bit, Mikaela, what's it like being a part of a multicultural family?
I guess to me, it's just the norm. So, I don't know anything different. But I would like, as we grow up, I would like our kids to celebrate both backgrounds. But yeah, to me, it's just what we are. I want them to know that they're both Asian and Black, my kids, and we're proud of that. We're proud of having a multicultural family. We teach them about both. We try our hardest to have as many diverse books as we can.
Mm-hmm. One of the things, we talk a lot about diversity in children's literature, talk a lot about the importance in the fact that books can be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. But you're right. I don't see a lot. So we have a lot of authors on who have books about Asian families, Black families, Latin families, but not a lot of mixed families. My family, growing up, was a multi-ethnic family, and it was beautiful. And like you, if someone were to ask me what's it like being part of this multi-ethnic family, my response would have been, it's kind of normal. We're a family.
Exactly. But yeah, I definitely thought it was important to get that out into the world so other families could either identify with it or see families like this and say, oh, that's normal to see families like that. I think it's really important to have that in children's literature.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that. Growing up white, I'm an old white man, almost 100 years old here. And, so I never thought about the fact that all the characters that I'm reading about in books and the books that most of them were bears and stuff like that. But, a lot of the characters were white. And so it never occurred to me that there was something missing there. So I never understood the need for books to be mirrors because I was looking at all the books were mirrors for me. Yeah. I really appreciated once I started reading books about, folks from different cultures. I really loved that window aspect because it gave me an opportunity to get to know cultures because I just love different cultures. I love being immersed in something that I'm totally unfamiliar with and allowing people to show me, tell me about your culture. What is this? And what's that? What can I eat that? What did I just eat? Okay, tasted kind of good. It's surprising. I think it's so important for everybody to be able to see different ethnicities, different races in books. And it's a great way to help us all understand that we might eat different foods, you might wear different clothes and listen to different music, but we're all the same. We're all part of this beautiful family. Yep.
And even reading when I was going on this journey, I read lots of literature just about the importance of it because for our family it's always been important. But I was reading articles and it says that studies have shown seeing people that look like themselves in books raises their self-awareness, raises their self-esteem, and it also increases empathy to see people that don't look like you.
Absolutely. So you have your Live, Laugh, Grow series, and we're talking about the first two books. By the time people are listening to this, Andre, the Best Big Brother, and Noelle, the Best Big Sister, will both be available. What other kind of subjects are you envisioning addressing in your future books?
So I have 8 more written. They're all in line to get illustrated. The next one that is to be published, hopefully it'll be out by the time this comes out as well, is called Andre Goes Fishing. And it's basically about Andre and his dad going to go fishing. They find out it's raining, so they go inside and they have to use their imaginations. So I thought that one would be perfect for this pandemic and quarantine, and using your imagination is so important as a kid. And our son, we do that all the time with him. We actually sit on our bed and pretend we're fishing off of the bed. So that's another one that was inspired by real life as well. So that one will be out soon. Some other topics I have Noelle Goes to School, and that's kind of about her overcoming her fears of going to school, which that has also happened. Let's see, which I have Andre Goes to the Museum. I have Andre Learns to Share. Noelle Cleans Her Room. So just a variety of topics. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I'm modeling it after like Splat the Cat and Little Critter. So just I'm hoping to write many, many more. But
Wonderful.
There's topics like that.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Hey, one thing I'm curious about, my wife and I have talked a lot about what the pandemic would have been like if it happened when our kids were babies like yours, mm-hmm. or in middle school or in high school. I imagine, that the experience would have been very, very different. How is it for a mom of very young kids? How has this year been for all of you?
It was a huge transition, but it definitely forced you to just be more creative in what you do with your kids. So, like I said, we use our imaginations a lot and play on the couches and beds and pretend they're completely different things. And my son absolutely loves that kind of stuff. You're just forced to come up with different ideas. We do lots of shadow puppets in the dark with flashlights. So it's just it's been good in that way that it just kind of forces you to be more creative and find fun things to do with your kids.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I mentioned earlier that you have a great website, and I know people are going to want to see it. So where can folks go to check out your website?
Yeah, my website is MikaelaWilsonBooks.com, Mikaela Wilsonbooks.com. And my books will be available, Andre the Best Big Brother and Noelle the Best Big Sister are going to be available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble's website. And that's where all of my books will be available on those two platforms.
Awesome. Well, we've had a wonderful time speaking to the author of Andre the Best Big Brother, Mikaela Wilson. Mikaela, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Talitha Shipman. She'll be here to celebrate Finding Beauty, her debut picture book. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to thank our guests, Dori Hillestead Butler, Kevan Atteberry, and Mikaela Wilson. Be sure to check out their books, please. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Alejandra Doherty, Hannah Pat Opoyski, Alexia Brown. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking through the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.